We should learn more today about how the state plans to replace the MCAS test. Governor Maura Healey and state education leaders will be at Dedham High School this morning. They're laying out the framework for new statewide high school graduation expectations. Back in 2024, voters eliminated the MCAS as a graduation requirement for students. Since then, leaders have been developing what's known as the vision of a graduate program.
A lot of people will be shopping for holiday gifts from home today. It is Cyber Monday after all, and analysts are predicting a record-setting day for online sales. Adobe Analytics predicts that shoppers are going to spend more than $14 billion on various items. That's up more than 6% compared to last year's Cyber Monday. It's estimated consumers have already spent more than $8 billion shopping for Black Friday deals online. Now, before clicking that purchase, the Better Business Bureau has some tips to outsmart the scammers. The BBB recommends researching the retailer, checking the website for flaws, and using secure payment methods like credit cards. And it's almost time for our annual Stuff the Sleigh toy drive, and we can't wait. You can help Boston 25 collect new unwrapped toys for kids of all ages. We'll be collecting toys at Jordan's Furniture in Avon on December the 10th. Toys will benefit Christmas in the City, who will then distribute them to families in need. Be here before you know it, Sheer.
I can't wait. It's such an awesome day. It really is. Hey, it's also, it's beginning to look a lot like December out there. You know, 9 inches of snow is average December snowfall in Boston. We haven't had that in several years. We've had below average December snowfall. In Worcester, the average is like 15 inches. And we're going to see the numbers start to add up tomorrow in Worcester. Not so much Boston, but in Worcester. And I'll be back with a look at our latest snow map coming up.
All right, let me take you out to Central Mass, Metro West, and it looks like we got rid of that crash that we had on 395 over by Route 20, so that's good. We'll leave you with this look here at the 93 area, lower deck, upper deck, as you come into and out of the city. Lower deck still maybe just a little bit sluggish there. We'll check back in just a bit. They are supposed to protect your most personal information, but many of us are still not picking strong passwords. The weak words many of us are still using.
And a lifelong dream becomes reality for a local teenager. Up next, how her love for reading helped her publish her very own book.
Time right now, 9:44. We're checking this morning's top stories. Opening statements are set for this morning in the trial for the Cohasset man accused of murdering his wife. Prosecutors say Brian Walshe murdered his wife, Anna, at their home nearly 3 years ago. Last month, he pleaded guilty to 2 lesser charges, including illegally disposing of her body. But he denies that he murdered Anna. Her body has never been found. If convicted of first-degree murder, Walshe faces a life sentence. One person was taken to the hospital after this fire in Hyde Park. It happened at this home on Birchcroft Road around 3 o'clock this morning. Firefighters kept the fire from spreading to neighboring homes. It's not clear what started that fire. The Patriots are looking to win their 10th straight game.
I told you that the Commonwealth must prove the charge here beyond a reasonable doubt. To do so, it must prove each element or
Campbell and
component
left
part
guard
of the
Jared
charge
Wilson are
beyond
out
a
after
reasonable
getting
doubt.
hurt against the Bengals last week. If the Pats win, they will move back into sole
As I
possession
said, the charge
of
here is
first
murder.
place in the
The
AFC.
Commonwealth is proceeding on the charge of first-degree murder on a theory of
At just 15
deliberate
years old, a North
premeditation.
Reading student is
In
now
order to
an
prove
author.
the defendant
Her love for
guilty of
reading,
murder on
writing,
the
and
theory
inspiration
of
from her
deliberate
first-grade
premeditation,
teacher helped pave
the
the way for
Commonwealth
her
must prove
first
5
book
elements
and a true
beyond a
pinch-me
reasonable
moment.
doubt. First,
Oh, there's Hamlet. There's
that the
12th
defendant
Night.
caused
For
the
as
death
long as she
of
can
Anna.
remember,
I just really loved stories and fiction.
Second,
15-year-old
that the
Charlotte
defendant
McAtee
intended
has loved
to
to
kill
read.
Anna
This is a
Walshe.
really good one.
That
I
is,
love
the
Hamlet
defendant
so much.
From the
consciously
classics
and
to the Harry
purposefully
Potter
intended
series,
to
she's read it all.
cause
Her
Anna
interest
Walshe's
spawned from
death.
her first-grade assignment.
We started
Third,
doing like
That
narrative
the defendant committed the
exercises, and I was
killing
like,
with
I
deliberate
really like this
premeditation.
and stuff
That
like
is, he
that.
decided
And
to kill after a
it just
period
kind of
of
evolved
reflection.
into something I want to pursue.
Fourth,
In
that
sixth
the
grade,
defendant
she
did
started
not act
writing
in
and
proper
couldn't stop.
I
self-defense
was
or
bored
proper
one day,
defense
so
of
I just
another.
like typed up a draft, and then
And fifth, that there were no
I went on and like,
mitigating
you know, next thing
Those
you
are
know,
the
it's like
basic
200
5
pages.
elements. And really, jurors,
Charlotte
what I'm
teamed up
trying
with
you
a writing
to absorb
coach, and then before she knew it, her book was in the
is that
hands of
there
an
are
editor.
5 component parts.
That's
and each
me right
of those
there.
And now
component
it's
parts,
online
the
and on the
combination
shelves at a
proves,
local
again,
bookstore.
beyond a
It, you know, something that felt like it was so far away from me. It's like right here,
Let
and
me
that's
talk
like
about some
easy
of
to
the
me. I can't even drive, and I wrote a book.
Not to mention how competitive it is to get a spot among some of the best authors. The owner of Molly's Bookstore in Melrose has the final say
At the
on
end of the
which books
trial,
can
when
be
you meet
placed
in
on the
private
shelves.
to
There's not a
deliberate,
lot
you
of
will
space
have
in
all
a
of the
small
exhibits
independent
with you.
bookstore, and so
We
each
cannot
box needs
provide
to
you a transcript of any of the
carefully
witnesses'
selected.
testimony.
But this one was a great one,
So
so we
you're
can
going to have to
further
rely
budget.
on your own
The
memories
Origins of a Star is a
what each
fictional
witness
horror book
said to
with a
you.
very real message.
Take
How
notes during the
important
trial,
it is to know
if you wish, and
who
our
you
court
are and your
officers
place
will
in the
pass
world,
out at an appropriate
and
time
how
a notepad
important it
and a
is
note
to
writing
have that
implement.
sense of
And our
individualism
pencil
and
is
identity.
here
You
today.
know, without it, you just kind
Some
of
jurors
feel
find it helpful to take
lost
notes while
and
listening to the
Charlotte
evidence.
credits her
It
first
may
grade
help you
teacher for
focus
helping her
on
find her
testimony,
place in the world.
to
Can
remember
still
what
distinctively
witnesses
remember her
said.
first grade teacher showing
Some of
other
you may not
teachers
want to
her
take
work
any
for a
notes,
narrative
and that's
exercise,
perfectly fine
which
too.
motivated her in her
Whether you
early
take
years
notes or
to
not, it's
continue
entirely
writing.
up to you.
In the 20 years as a first grade teacher, Katie
Whether you
Barron
take
says she
notes
was
or you do
humbled to be
not,
mentioned
you
in
need to
Charlotte's
pay
book.
close
Elementary
attention
teachers have such
to
a vital
each
impact
witness
on
and what they
children,
say. In
educationally,
deciding
socially,
who
emotionally,
and what to believe,
and they really lay
you
the
should
foundation
watch and listen
for
carefully
their learning.
to each
So
witness.
when you get an
Think
experience
about
like
whether the
this,
witness
it's,
seems
it's so
believable,
rewarding, incredibly
whether the
rewarding
witness's
that
memory
you
seems
were an
reliable,
influence in some way.
and anything
It's that
else
foundation that
about
keeps
how
Charlotte
the witness
motivated for
testifies
more.
and
there's
what the
always,
witness says
always gonna
that
be
helps you
something
determine whether and
great
how much
ahead
to
of you
believe
if
that
you
witness.
just work for it.
Charlotte has
When you
just scratched the
deliberate at the
surface
end
in
of the
her
trial,
young writing
remember
career. She
that
has
it
3
is
more
your
drafts in the
memory
works, and she
that
one day
counts.
has hopes of
Your
becoming
notes
an
may help
English
jog
professor.
your memory about what
I'm
a
Kelly
witness
Sullivan for
said,
your local station,
but they are not a
Boston 25
substitute
News.
for what you and your
Let's
fellow
take you over
jurors
to the
remember about
expressway, and you can
testimony.
see that the northbound side.
Not
what
assume
can I say? You're
that
always
because
busy
you
over
or
in the
another
South
juror
Bay
wrote
area of
something
Dorchester.
down,
Southbound
that it
side
is more
moving
accurate
okay.
than your
As we
or
take a
another
look at the
juror's
map, we
memory
had a couple of things
of what the
earlier,
witness
including that
actually
crash on
said.
Route 60 that was over by
Your
Guns.
notes are
We were not
confidential.
on it. We also
No
have a
one,
crash on
including
93
me, will read
southbound
them.
over by Route
The
28,
court officers
Randolph
will
Ave,
collect your
as you can see there at
notebooks
the bottom
and
of
your
your
writing
screen.
implements at
And we
the
have a
end
crash
of
coming
each
in on
trial
Pike
day,
eastbound at
and will
Fenway
keep
Park.
them
It's
safe
so new,
until we
it's not
return to you the
even on there
following
yet. Or
morning.
maybe
And
it
at
is
the
there. I
end
think
of
I
the
just saw the
trial,
icon.
I will order
Taking
the
you
court
farther southward,
officers to
Island State
destroy
Line,
any
South
notes
Coast,
that
Plymouth
were
area,
taken.
looking good. Let me take you over to Shiri right now. And Shiri, calm before the
Next
storm.
up,
Aside
I
from
want to
accurate.
Yeah.
So we're mostly
If you have
sunny
any
right now
trouble
in 41 in Boston. There is
seeing
a little bit
anything,
of a breeze. You can see
hearing
that
anything,
15 mile per hour
if you need
wind
an
there.
unscheduled
That
break,
breeze also felt in
please
Worcester,
raise
so
your
it's
hand
cool.
and
It's a
one of
little
the
bit
court
breezy,
officers will
but
come
at least
over.
it's bright for
We'll make
today.
the
You can see
necessary
high temperatures on track for upper
adjustments. I
30s,
remind
lower
you
40s.
that
These are
we
below.
take a morning, morning break at about 11 o'clock, and that's usually about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on what I have to do during that time. And then we proceed on to the lunch hour at 1 o'clock. We take a break from 1 to 2, and then the afternoon session is the longest session, 2 hours long, between the hours of 2 and 4. So you can predict your day, how your day will lay out most days that you're here. If you need to communicate with me at any point during the trial, again, let one of the court officers know and they'll get me the information. And do it through a note is the best way. Finally, jurors, I'm not going to give you the longer version of this because I just asked you about this morning. But it's imperative to the administration of justice in each criminal case, and in this one, that you abide by those rules that you agreed to. If anybody needs another written version of the order that I gave to you, I have plenty of them. Don't hesitate to ask. But I remind you, no social media, no news media. Don't do any research about this case on any medium. Don't talk to anyone about this case. And continue to have open minds as you listen to the evidence in the case. It's the first thing that I'm going to ask you every morning, and it's the last thing you're going to hear me remind you of every night. All right? The lawyers at the side of the bench. Jurors, I know that you will try this case according to the oath that you took this morning. In that oath, you promised you would well and truly try the issues between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the evidence and the law. If you follow that oath, approach this case with an open mind, and make your decisions fairly and without prejudice or bias or sympathy for anyone, then you will arrive at a just and fair verdict. It's now time for the opening statements. And you will find that there are customs in the law, many customs in the law that dictate how the case plays out. And the first custom I'll alert you to is that the Commonwealth opens the case first. ADA Connor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, may it please the court?
It does.
On January 4th, 2023, Teresa Marchese returned to work after New Year's holiday. She works at Tishman Speyer, and she is the Director of Human Capital Management. That is to say that she's the Director of Human Resources. And Tishman Speyer is a real estate management company, but it's a global real estate management company. It has buildings all over the world. And this office that Ms. Marchese works in is in Washington, D.C. When she returned to her office in Washington, D.C. that morning, she was alerted that one of her coworkers' husbands was trying to find her coworker. The coworker was Anna Walshe, and her husband is Brian Walshe. Teresa Marchese knew Anna Walshe because she hired her. She hired her in February 2022 to work at the Washington, D.C. office of Tishman Speyer and to manage some of those buildings in Washington, D.C. She also knew that Anna Walshe commuted from Cohasset to Washington to work at Tishman Speyer, and that her husband, Brian, and her 3 children were still in Cohasset at this time. She also knew where Anna Walshe lived in Washington, D.C. Anna Walshe had bought a townhouse right near where Teresa Marchese lives in Washington. So when she heard that Brian Walshe was looking for Anna, she got concerned. And she spoke to her boss, Jeff Chaw. And the two of them went into a conference room and called Brian Walshe. Brian was calm, and he said that on January 1st, Anna left their Cohasset home for a work emergency and had to fly back to Washington, D.C. And he hasn't spoken to her since then. This is the longest they've ever gone without speaking. So, Teresa Marchese went and drove to Anna Walshe's townhouse. She took another employee with her, and on the way there, she had another conversation with Brian Walshe. Brian was calm, and he gave her the combination to the garage so Miss Marchese could get into the building. Miss Marchese got there. She was able to look in the windows. Nothing was broken. Nothing was out of order. She got into the garage, and she found some cardboard boxes that had yet to be unpacked, some car seats, no car, no Anna Walshe. Now the door from the garage to the home, that was locked, so she couldn't get inside. So Miss Marchese called Mr. Walshe back again, and she told him that she was going to loop into this conversation Tishman Speyer's global head of security, who also works in Washington, D.C. His name is Hugh Dunleavy. He's a retired Secret Service agent. Mr. Walshe is calm. Mr. Dunleavy is looped into this conversation on the phone, and Mr. Walsh's demeanor changes. He becomes very upset. Mr. Dunleavy calms him down, asks him a series of questions. And Mr. Walshe repeats, Anna left the home in Cohasset on January 1st to come to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency. Mr. Dunleavy follows up. Have you called the police? What is the local police department in your town? You live in Cohasset. You need to call the police. The call ends. Mr. Dunleavy works with the Washington police and helps facilitate them getting into the home in Washington, D.C., and Anna is not there. He also calls the Cohasset police just before noon on January 4th. And he reports Anna missing. Hugh Dunleavy from Washington, D.C. calls the Cohasset police, and that is the first time Anna Walshe has been reported missing to the police. And it was done just before noon on January 4th. And no one has seen her since January 1st. Over the next few weeks, it'll be the honor of Ms. Cusick, Ms. Yaz, and myself to represent the Commonwealth. And in that time, we will prove the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the premeditated murder of his wife, Anna Walshe. And we're going to do that by presenting evidence to you. And evidence will come to you, as Her Honor pointed out, in 2 different forms. One is kind of tangible. You'll see photos of the family home in Cohasset at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. You'll see videos from different stores. You'll see Anna Walsh's banking records. You will also see objects, like a Tyvek suit, like a hatchet, like a hacksaw. Now, in addition to those objects, you will hear from witnesses. Witnesses like Teresa Marchese and Hugh Dunleavy, who I just mentioned. You'll also hear from a group of witnesses that are Anna Walshe's friends and colleagues. They will tell you that Anna was 39 years old in January 2003. She was married to the defendant. She had 3 children. They'll tell you that she was a Serbian immigrant, that she came to this country and began working in the hospitality industry by working in hotels in Washington and Massachusetts, and that she transitioned to real estate. She got the opportunity to work for Jem Mutlu, who had his own real estate company. She actually wound up running that company for him. That was until February 2022, where she got what Brian Walshe would refer to as a dream job, where she got to work for Tishman Speyer. And she would make more money than she had ever made before in her career. She had purchased a townhouse in Washington, D.C., and she was expecting to have her family come with. However, Brian and the children had stayed in Massachusetts. And the reason is that Brian had previously pled guilty to a count of fraud in the Boston Federal District Courthouse. But he hadn't been sentenced yet. Now, he was accused of owing over $400,000 of restitution. At this point in time, Anna was the breadwinner for the family, and she had moved to D.C. She was still commuting back and forth, but looking to have the family join her in D.C. And Brian, too. However, when she bought the townhouse, she did this with the aid of a real estate agent by the name of William Fastow. She was introduced to Mr. Fastow from her former boss, Jem Mutlu. Mr. Fastow will testify. And he will tell you that they became friends, and that friendship became romantic. And that carried on into November of 2022, when Anna needed to go visit her mother, who was sick back in Belgrade, Serbia. Anna flew to Dublin, Ireland, the weekend of Thanksgiving, and Mr. Fastow joined her for that weekend. She then flew and visited her sick mother in Serbia, and then would return back to the United States. Mr. Fastow, after Dublin, would go back to Washington, D.C. But Anna missed Thanksgiving with Brian and the children. And then on Christmas Eve that same year, Anna went out to dinner with Mr. Fastow. They went out to dinner in Annapolis with another couple. And she stayed the night. And she was supposed to get a flight out on Christmas Day. But she couldn't get a flight. So she had to drive up from Washington, D.C. to Cohasset. And she missed Christmas Eve and most of Christmas Day with Brian. She would fly back to Washington, D.C. And on December 29th, she would go to dinner with one of her friends, who will testify before you. And that friend will say that she was uncharacteristically tired and emotional. You'll also hear from a series of witnesses that dealt with Anna Walshe right before New Year's. She returned back to Cohasset on December 30th, and she was going to stay with the family until January 3rd. You'll hear how she went to a bar class, B-A-R-R-E. It's an intensive ballet class. You'll hear from the instructor, who will say that she did exceedingly well in that class. A person who was with her in a nail salon will testify. She got her nails done on New Year's Eve. And Mr. Mutlu will testify. He went over to the Walshe family residence on New Year's Eve for dinner. 3 adults were there. It was Mr. Mutlu, Brian, and Anna. He got there around 8:30. He brought some snacks for the kids. Actually got to play with the oldest child. And he spent the night talking to his friends. He'd characterize them as jovial. They shared champagne. They weren't drunk. They were enjoying the new year. They actually signed the champagne box. And you'll see that, where they were looking forward to the new year. Brian cooked. Brian was attentive. Brian also said to Mr. Mutlu that night that he had lost his phone, it had been misplaced, but he had felt free as a result of it. Mr. Mutlu left that home on New Year's Day at 1:30 a.m. And there was no mention of a work emergency in Washington, D.C. that would require Anna to fly out or leave the family home at 6 or 7 a.m. that day. Now on January 4th, after Hugh Dunleavy had called the Cohasset Police Department, the Cohasset Police Department dispatched Officer Greg Lawrence to go speak to Mr. Walshe at his home. Officer Lawrence went. He was met outside by Brian Walshe. Brian Walshe informed Officer Lawrence that Anna had left on January 1st, had taken an Uber or Lyft to Logan Airport to fly out to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency. Gave her a phone number for Anna Walshe, described her as 5'2", that she was 39 years old, approximately 115 pounds. He hadn't heard her. Officer Lawrence went back to the Cohasset Police Department, worked with other Cohasset police officers, trying to find any connection to Uber or Lyft or local taxi cabs. Cohasset police would then begin a process of pinging Anna's phone. You're going to get to see the records from that, but essentially the process involves the cell phone carrier, in this case Verizon, sending a signal out to the phone to try and locate. And the Verizon records will show that the last time that phone that belonged to Anna Walshe interacted with the network was shortly after 3 a.m. on January 2nd. And when it did so, it was in the area of the Walshe home. That same day, Cohasset Police also tasked Detective Schmidt with investigating this case. He and Officer Lawrence would go back to the Walshe family residence at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway and interview Brian Walshe. And he recorded it. You'll get to hear the recording. And Brian will talk about how Anna was commuting back and forth from Cohasset to Washington for work, how there were some issues with his federal case, and how Mr. Mutlu had come over for dinner that night on New Year's Eve, and how Anna had to leave between 6 and 7 on January 1st. He also, in that interview, described what Anna was wearing when she left the home. Blue-gray hunter boots, a black jacket, and an Hermes watch. So Sergeant Schmidt will testify before you, and he will tell you that he worked on this missing person investigation and called in additional resources to help. On the 5th, he had his own department do a search of the woods near the family home. On the 6th, he called in a task force made of several different police departments to do further searching of the woods in and around the Walshe family home. Contacted the state police to use their resources. He also got the opportunity to speak to Mr. Walshe on January 5th, January 7th, and January 8th. And when he did those interviews, he was accompanied by detectives from the state police. And those interviews were recorded. And you'll get to hear those interviews. And Mr. Walshe, during those interviews, will explain that he and Anna were happily married. He had no knowledge of any extramarital affair. That Anna had her dream job. That it was taking care of the family. And conversely, he didn't take a salary this year out of his company that was a consulting company. He told the police that he owed over $400,000 in restitution on his federal matter, that this case was causing stress on his marriage, that he might have to go to jail. He said that they were very happy and that the biggest problem was that they were apart. Brian also told the police that Anna's job had caused her to miss Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with the family. And that Anna, traveling to visit her sick mom, caused her to miss Thanksgiving with the family. And that he did not want to have an argument with Donna about missing another holiday on January 1st. He had a discussion with her about Christmas Day. He was concerned that by him looking around trying to find her, that she had embarrassed her. So he tells the police, I didn't want to have an argument. So I understood she was going to come back, and she left for that emergency at work. You'll also have access to financial records that will show that Anna Walshe had approximately $200,000 in accounts at Fidelity, and that there was over $1 million in life insurance in Anna Walshe, and that Brian Walshe was the beneficiary of those policies. And in addition to the Cohasset police, the Massachusetts State Police also worked with them on trying to find Anna. You're going to hear from two troopers in particular, Trooper Nicholas Marino and Trooper Connor Keith. They are digital forensic specialists. They have special training in examining computers, tablets, phones. And in this matter, they had the opportunity to examine a MacBook, iPads, and cell phones that were at the Walshe house. And they will explain that on Christmas Day, when Anna had missed Christmas Eve and was, after spending the evening with Mr. Fastow, and was driving up from Washington, D.C., the cell phone that Brian Walshe was using looked up Mr. Fastow on the internet. And that on December 27th, a MacBook that used the Apple ID for Brian Walshe, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, researched best strategies to divorce for a man, best state to divorce for a man, Washington, D.C. divorce laws. On December 29th, Brian Walsh's cell phone was researching buildings that Anna Walshe managed for Tishman Speyer and emergencies she had handled for them in the past. Trooper Guarino will also explain to you the internet history of that MacBook that had Brian Walsh's Apple ID beginning on January 1st. At 4:54 a.m., the MacBook searched best way to dispose of a body, and then went to similar websites for more than an hour. At 6:24 a.m., same day, the same device searched how long for someone to missing to inherit, how long missing to be dead, can you throw away body parts? Later on that morning, on January 1st at 9:33 a.m., the MacBook went to search how long does DNA last? And then an article, is it possible to clean DNA off a knife? 30 minutes later, the MacBook researched disposal of a cell phone. At 10:28 a.m., the MacBook researched, I am the user of my wife's credit card. She is missing. And again, on January 1st, at 11:28 a.m., it searched best way to dispose of body parts after a murder. Trooper Guarino will explain the numerous websites and searches done by the MacBook in the morning and early afternoon on January 1st, and that these websites were about cleaning blood with ammonia, bleach, and hydrogen peroxide. Websites visited included those as whether it is better to throw away crime scene clothes or wash them. One site was entitled, You Want to Get Away with Murder? Use a special deterrent. This type of activity on the MacBook continued into January 2nd, when it looked up, how long does Lowe's keep security footage? How to saw a body. How to dismember a body. Can you be charged with murder without a body? Can you identify a body with broken teeth? The Knack book also visited websites for apartment complexes in Brockton and Chelsea. One in particular, Chatham West in Brockton. Brian Walshe told investigators that his phone, which was an iPhone 13 mini, had been misplaced and not found until the afternoon of January 2nd, 2023. When investigators examined that phone, they learned that it had been connected to a power source. And it had been unlocked 4 times by either using the face or the passcode. Investigators will also tell you that the location data from that phone showed that it remained in the Walshe residence until the afternoon of January 2nd, 2023. However, there was another phone in the Walshe residence, an iPhone SE, which belonged to one of the children. When investigators examined the location data from that phone, they found that on January 1st, the phone traveled to a Walgreens in Cohasset, then to a liquor store nearby the defendant's mother's home, an apartment complex in Swampscott, to a CVS in Danvers, to a Lowe's in Danvers, and to a Stop and Shop in Swampscott. You will see the surveillance video from those stores. You will see the video from Walgreens, where a white man with dark hair using a credit card buys Band-Aids and antibiotics. You will see on the surveillance video at the CVS in Danvers that a white man with dark hair, now wearing a mask, buys hydrogen peroxide using cash. You will see the surveillance video from the Stop and Shop in Swampscott, where a white man then buys ammonia with cash. And you'll see the surveillance video from the Lowe's in Danvers, where a white man wearing a mask and dark hair buys several items that cost more than $400 using cash, including a Tyvek soup and cutting instruments such as shears, snips, and a hacksaw. Investigators will explain how the cell phone location data from the iPhone SE shows that it went to a Home Goods in the morning of January 2nd, and that Brian's iPhone 13 mini went to a Home Depot in Rockland in the afternoon of January 2nd. You will see the surveillance videos from those stores. You'll see a white man with dark hair at Home Goods buying scented candles and area rugs. And you'll see a white man with dark hair at the Home Depot buying more cleaning supplies. 20 pounds of baking soda, mop, buckets, and a hatchet. The investigators will also explain to you that Brian Walshe's cell phone on January 3rd was located near apartment complexes in Brockton. You'll see the surveillance videos from some of the apartment complexes, including one of Chatham West. You'll see someone going to the dumpster and then leaving. The investigators will also tell you that on January 5th, Brian Walshe's cell phone was in the area of dumpsters and a trash compactor by his mother's apartment complex in Swampscott, and that this was before he was interviewed by Detective Schmidt later that night. On January 9th, the police went to those dumpsters, and they took that trash compactor and that dumpster to a facility in Peabody, where they searched the contents of both. And they found an Hermes watch, blue-gray Hunter boots, a black coat, a COVID vaccination card with Anna Walsh's name on it, rugs, a Tyvek soup, a hammer, shears, snips, a hatchet, and a hacksaw. The police will tell you that these items were packaged and brought back to a laboratory, and they were brought there for examination. And how some of these items were examined for DNA. and the DNA was compared to samples they had from Anna and Ryan. Scientists from the state DNA lab will identify DNA of Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe on the Tyvek suit. They will explain that Anna Walsh's DNA was found from items in the dumpster, including drugs, the hatchet, and the hacksaw. Jem Mutlu said goodbye to Anna Walshe about 1 o'clock, 1:30 a.m. on New Year's Day. When he left, she was home, she was alive, she was with her husband. No one has seen her since her husband said she left on January 1st. She has not accessed her finances, her email, her phone has made no calls, and no one has found her body. During this case, we ask two things. The first is that you keep an open mind. Do not rush to judgment, but instead, see how all the evidence fits together. Pay careful attention to the timing of certain events. And second, use your common sense. Don't leave it home. Bring it with you here as you make your examination of every piece of evidence. And at the end of this trial, we will speak to you one more time. And it is at that time we will ask that you find the defendant guilty of murdering his wife with deliberate premeditation. Thank you.
Thank you, 88 Connor. Jurors, why don't you take a break and stand up, shake a leg. And when you're comfortable and have regained your focus, you may be seated. Now we'll hear from the defense for the opening statements. Attorney Tipton.
Thank you, Your Honor. Brian Walshe lied to the police. Lied to him on January 4th, lied to him on January 5th, lied to him on January 7th. Brian Walshe went to Lowe's and bought tools. Brian Walshe went to Home Depot and bought tools. Brian Walshe, beginning about 4:54 a.m., began a frantic and tragic search that you will hear about. You'll hear the evidence of that. You will hear evidence that those searches evolved from how best to dispose a body to even darker subject matter. As he wrestled with the fact that Anna Walshe was dead. That evidence that you will hear will be hard to understand, but it is true. On January 1st of 2023, Jem Mutlu left the family home of Brian and Anna Walshe sometime between 1 and 1:30 in the morning. Anna and Brian Walshe continued to celebrate the New Year's. They went upstairs to the bedroom. About an hour later, you'll hear evidence that Mr. Walshe got up, went back down the stairs to clean the kitchen. You'll see evidence that he looked at his email, You'll hear evidence that he then returned to the bedroom, intending nothing more than to crawl into bed with Anna Walshe, the woman he loved. When he entered the bedroom and began to get into the bed, he sensed something was wrong. You will hear evidence that it made no sense to him. But he nudged Anna, his wife. She didn't respond. He nudged her again, a little harder. She didn't respond. He nudged her now in a frantic and panic reaction to where she actually rolled off the bed. You'll hear evidence that now he is panicking and he doesn't understand what has happened and what is happening. It didn't make any sense to him. It didn't make sense that somebody that he had just been with and enjoyed New Year's Eve into New Year's Day would suddenly be dead. Not him. You will hear evidence in this case of sudden, unexplained death. You will hear evidence that it is rare. You will hear evidence that it happens in young people and old people. You will hear evidence it happens in male and female. You will hear evidence it happens during the day and during the night, that it happens to trained athletes. You will hear evidence that it can be the result of both mechanical and or electrical problems within the body. You will hear evidence that it might be cardiovascular, pulmonary, neurological, or other reasons. You will hear evidence that it occurs in people who have never manifested a symptom that something might be wrong. And in fact, you will hear evidence that sometimes the first manifestation that something is or was wrong with someone is the sudden, unexplained death. That's the evidence you will hear in this case. Sudden, unexplained death is known within the medical community and the forensic community. But it is to this day not well understood, and that is the evidence you will hear. And it is not well known to non-medical professionals. And you will hear evidence Brian Walshe never imagined somebody suddenly died. 1 hour he's with her, he cleans the kitchen, he comes back up, and she is dead. You will hear evidence in this case that Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe loved each other. Yes, there was stress in the marriage. Stress born out of a simple problem that took its toll. And that's the pending federal case that had begun in 2018 and was still going forward. And what happened was, over time, Anna Walshe got a job in D.C. with the support of Brian Walshe. It was a huge stepping stone in her career. It paid twice the salary. And they talked about it. And you will hear evidence that they had to make a decision. Brian could not leave Cohasset because of the pending federal case. So who would take care of the children? While Anna worked in D.C., Brian would. And he did. There was stress in commuting back and forth between D.C. and Cohasset. Brian Walshe experienced that stress too. And Anna Walshe and him talked about it. They talked about it on Christmas Day of 2022. And that's what the evidence will be. Yes, there was an affair. You will hear evidence of an affair. An affair does not make someone a bad person, does not make someone a bad mother. Make no mistake about that. But yes, there was an affair. Not between Brian Walshe and anyone, but between Anna Walshe and William Casper. will be that Anna Walshe did everything she could to hide that affair. That she did not tell her closest friends, her confidants, some of whom lived in D.C., the same person, Alyssa Kirby, that she spent December 29th with, drinking and talking about her life. She hid the affair. William Fasto will tell me that he was unaware of any plans of Anna ever telling Brian about the affair. William Fasto will testify that they behaved differently in public in D.C. to make sure there was no appearance of the affair. William Fasto will testify that Anna Walshe told him she would be devastated if Brian ever learned about the affair. Brian Walshe didn't know about the affair. He did know. Anna Walshe had a crush on William Fasto because she told him. And he did not react in a jealous way. And you will hear evidence that over the close to decade that these two people were in love, and all you have to do is look at the evidence and the photograph you'll see of Anna Walshe. And the evidence will establish she is a beautiful woman. And it was not unusual for her to comment to Brian. I had some man look at me today. I think he liked her. That didn't upset Brian, not over a period of 10 years. And when she told him that she had a crush on William Fasto, the man who had sold them the $1.3 million townhouse in D.C., it didn't upset Brian. He trusted her. In fact, you will hear evidence from Melissa Kirby that Anna Walshe told her, I wish he would be jealous. You will hear evidence that there was no financial issues or problems. Anna Walshe just got that job in the early part of 2022 that paid close to $300,000 a year. They owned that townhouse in D.C. It was worth over $1 million. They owned whole life insurance policies on their sons in the amount of $1 million each. Whole life that you will hear you can borrow against if you need cash. You will hear evidence that Brian Walshe's mother gifted them money, and actually you'll hear from the landlord of the home that they were living in at the time that Brian was living in, taking care of the 3 boys while Anna worked in D.C., that it was his mother who was paying the rent, because that's what grandmothers do. There was no financial problems here. They owned investment property in Massachusetts. The evidence in this case is that Brian Walshe loved Anna Walshe. You will hear that she spoke of him in glowing terms to William Fasto. That she said, I want people to see the Brian that I know. You will hear how she talked about her relationship with Brian with Alyssa Kirby. And notwithstanding the fact that Anna Walshe was having an affair, she described their relationship as open and honest. He believed their marriage was open and honest because he loved her. You will hear how she described Brian as her best friend to her friend Alyssa Kirby. You will also see evidence of text messages that you may use to determine for yourself if there was love between these two individuals. The importance about those text messages that you'll see is simply that they're dated. The ones you'll see are dated beginning December 25th of 2022, 7 days before New Year's Day. 12:25, Anna Walshe and Brian Walshe are texting each other, and she is sending him 7 properties, listings, primarily out of Zillow, 7 listings of properties in the greater D.C. area, Bethesda, Annapolis. They're searching for future investment properties. You'll see that, and you'll hear evidence that then she comes up to celebrate Christmas with Brian and their 3 beautiful boys. You'll see on 12/27, now that she's back in D.C., these text messages between them. And they're talking about one of their properties. And they're talking about the fact that it, in fact, sold. So now they need to figure out what to do with the proceeds. You'll see on 12/28, text exchange between Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe. Now, she's back in D.C. She's not feeling well. She's telling Brian, I don't feel well. So I'm going to stay at home and work at home today in D.C. And they joke. And on the text, Brian says something like, well, I guess I'll have to get you a plunger. Anna responds, I'll tell you what. I'll buy the plunger. You buy me that Porsche. Why? Because Anna Walshe wanted a Porsche. And what you see on that text exchange, right after she says that, is you'll see postings that he sent to her of the Porsches he'd been shopping for the woman he loved. And you'll see in his mantle that he was shopping for Porsches because she had asked for one. On 12/29, you'll see a text exchange between them where they're talking about a 3-story brownstone that she had found that maybe they'll buy for investment. And you'll see the text references to how much it cost, the square footage it's up and below. You'll see text exchange between them where they're talking about possible renovations in the future. They are talking about the future. And this is on 12/29. And then on 12/30, simple texts between them about her catching her flight from D.C. to get to Cohasset for New Year's. She texts them, I've landed. And what you see in those text messages are she begins to send Brian pictures of her playing with the boys now that she's reunited with her 3 beautiful boys again. And then you see 7 pictures sent by Brian Walshe back to Anna, taken of her playing with the boys. And how do they sign off these texts? You'll see them. Brian says, love you. And Anna Walshe says, love you too. We've come full circle in this opening, and now we're back to New Year's Eve. Jim Mutlow, the family friend, is invited by Anna to come to the house to celebrate New Year's Eve. You'll hear evidence that he was thrilled. He was thrilled to be with 2 people he'd known for years, but he hadn't seen in some time. He knew their kids, 3 beautiful boys. He'll describe how when he drove up in the driveway, Anna Walshe ran down the driveway in her heels, no coat, on a cold winter day to hug him. And then what happened? They all went into the house. And what was occurring in the house? Brian was cooking New Year's. He was feeding them as they all talked for 4 to 5 hours. And what were they talking about? They were talking about the future. They were talking about investments. Anna Walshe told a story about how Brian had found a ring for her and the whole adventure of finding the ring and buying the ring. And she talked about it in glowing terms when she talked about how Brian did that. Mr. Mutlow will describe that for the 4 or 5 hours that he was there, he saw no problems between them. He said that Brian was happy and Anna was happy. He described the atmosphere as jovial, festive. He described it as loving. As adults do for New Year's Eve, they celebrated with wine and champagne. You will have that box, or at least photographs of that champagne box, where they signed it. And what Anna signed on that box she wrote, "Let's make 2023 the best one yet." She went on to say, courage, love, perseverance, compassion, joy, and signed it, love, Anna. Nothing was more important to both Anna and Brian but those 3 beautiful boys. They had talked about the problem of the federal case. It was stressful. When you heard in the Commonwealth's opening the reference to a divorce search, please understand that the other evidence will be that that singular search occurred between conversations between Anna and Brian about the sale of their property. You'll see that that search occurred about 8:30 on 12/27. And why is that important? The evidence will show that the only time Anna Walshe talked about divorce with William Fastow, she talked about it in terms of Brian and I attempting to preserve the family assets. Why is that important? Because yes, there was $400,000 of restitution that was going to come due. And yes, Brian may have had to go to prison for some time. And what did that mean? It meant that there was going to have to be arrangements, not just to pay the money, which wasn't going to be a problem, but the boys had to move up to D.C. because Brian could no longer take care of them. And there would be all that added expense. And they went so far as to talk to Robin Howe, their nanny, their babysitter, and asked her if she would consider moving up. So there were expenses. So when you talk about preserving the family assets, you have to decide, how is it that I make sure, how is it, as Brian Walshe will tell you, how is it that I make sure that my wife and my 3 sons are financially secure if I have to go to prison for a day, for a week, for a month, or for years? That's what they were talking about. And in all of the other digital data that the Commonwealth has been poring over for 2 years, you will not hear evidence of any other conversation about divorce. And you won't hear it from William Fastow. In fact, William Fastow will tell you he had resigned himself to think Anna Walshe was never going to leave Brian, father of their children. Jim Mutlow left around 1:30. Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe went upstairs. He went back down to the kitchen about an hour later to clean it up. And then the impossible, the unimaginable happened. It didn't make sense to Brian Walshe. It was confusing. He never thought anybody would believe that Anna Walshe was alive 1 minute and dead the next. And all he could think about were those 3 boys. What would happen to their 3 boys now that Anna is no longer here? What will happen if they think he did something bad to Anna? Where will those 3 boys go? And so, he told the story. He told lies. He tried to hide so he could hang on to those boys. Brian Walshe never killed him. Brian Walshe never thought about killing him. Never. Think about that. Brian Walshe is not guilty.
Jurors, once again, why don't you stand up? Shake a leg. 15 minutes before the break, but it's been a long little stretch here, so I can either break you now or we can start the evidence. Does anybody, just by show of hands, need a bathroom break? Or can hold on for 15? All right, we're going to take your break early, and we'll see you back in about 20 minutes.
All rise for the court, please. What is that? On the road.
Please be seated. Does anyone need to address anything with me?
No, Your Honor.
Anything from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we'll take about a 20-minute break. And Commonwealth, what's the lineup today?
It's going to be Sergeant Harrison Schmidt for the entirety of the day. The intention is to try and get through the audio interviews today, Your Honor.
And everything went well with the editing, so to speak, of the...
Yes, we've made all the edits that we encouraged and the ones that the court told us to make.